We have an ugly Thursday night football game, but it might feature the first coach who will be fired in 2023. We're going to talk about all that on a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Let's roll.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tyler Rowland, local expert from Locked On Titans, here with Alex Clancy, local expert from Locked On Cardinals. We got a lot to discuss on today's show. It is a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast, and that means that it is sponsored by PrizePicks. Look, it's crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, and it's presented by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. We are going to break down this Thursday night football matchup between the Commanders and the Bears, talk about which NFL head coach will be fired first, and as we always do on Thursdays, our best games of week 5. Thank you for making the Locked On NFL podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's Monday through Friday, NFL content all year long on all apps, and of course, always for free. But with that being said, Alex, taking a look at this matchup between the 0-4 Chicago Bears and the 2-2 Washington Commanders, I think the big surprise here is the Commanders have been spicy. They've been feisty, whatever word you want to go with here, but the Commanders have been better than maybe some people expected. This is in Washington. Do you think the Bears have any chance of getting their first win of the season?
Yeah. I mean, they were the best team for 2 quarters and 12 minutes last week. And I think Denver's a better team than Washington, even though they didn't show it to start the season. Aside from that strip, perfect bounce off the ground fumble by Justin Fields that they got housed to tie the game late, the Bears didn't look terrible against Denver. Denver's defense isn't what it's been. It's not what it is, roster-wise on paper. Washington's defense, their front, is one of the best in football. But the Justin Fields is now turned completely polarizing, where he does not go through his progressions fast enough. Yes, he does not get rid of the ball fast enough. Yes, he does not evade the pocket when he should at times, even though he's a heavy runner more than compared to other quarterbacks in the league. But there are flashes from him. They're like, do that more. With Sam Howell, it's not so much. It's more everybody else. Sam Howell has made some great throws, like that one throw that he needled right into Terry McLaurin between 3 defenders for a touchdown a couple weeks ago. We've seen it. But this is more about Justin Fields versus the other 22 on the Washington Commanders, and not necessarily Sam Howell versus Justin Fields. I think they can definitely go in and win this game. I definitely think they can go in and win this game.
Yeah, and right now on FanDuel, they're 5.5-point underdogs. 5.5 points, man. That's kind of a lot in a game that I don't think will feature a lot of points. I think the Commanders definitely have some pieces outside. They have good weapons on offense. The offensive line should be able to hold up. I don't really fear the Bears defense in any way, but I agree with you that Justin Fields, more than Sam Howell, Justin Fields could take over the game. And the Commanders do have a good defensive line, incredible pass rush, all of that. But if there's anybody who can kind of negate that just with their natural talent, it's Fields. So the one huge advantage that the Commanders have, if Justin Fields has a good game, he could do it. I got to be honest. I just don't know. With all the bad vibes around the Bears right now, I don't know if they're going to get their first win of the season on the road. But, man, if you could get on FanDuel and tease the Bears up to 11.5 points with a little six-point tease, I would love double-digit points for the Bears. I think this game is closer than people expect because I don't think Washington is quite as good as maybe some people. Oh, I'm surprised by Washington. Maybe they're good. I don't think they're quite as good as what maybe some people are led to believe by the first 4 weeks. And honestly, the Bears are a mess, but I don't think that they're so bad that they should be winless. Also, do you remember when we talked about MVP before the season and we made our predictions? and we laughed at how some people were saying Justin Fields for MVP, we were at least right with that. And go ahead and give me your final thoughts on this one. But I do want to harken back to one thing we talked about last week before we go.
Yeah, didn't Justin Fields have the most tickets on him to win MVP? I think
there was substantial belief. Okay.
Yeah. The one redeeming quality from Sunday's loss for the Bears was him and DJ Moore starting to get it going. And listen, it's not easy for a wide receiver who's never played with the quarterback and vice versa just to have inherent rapport and trust and things like that. Like Chase Claypool's an idiot. I'm sorry. Like he's acting like an idiot. I'm not saying as a person, I'm saying he's acting like a player who doesn't really want to be where he is. Which leaves them not a whole lot. They're not going to be able to get a 5th-round pick for Chase Claypool after trading pretty much a first for him. So him and DJ Moore really need to be able to get to that 15-target level where he was for a large portion of the time in Carolina. They just need to work it out. And if you can move the ball down the field with DJ Moore, with Cole Kmet, which will open up the running game, which will make things a lot easier, this is kind of the time. 5, 6, 7. These weeks when we're going to find out what this team could be made of. And I'm excited to talk in the next segment about a head coach that may not be around to see it.
Right. I think you're right, because whether the Bears are likely going to have a top pick this year, and they have the Panthers pick too. So they're going to have chances to get a new quarterback in next year's draft. I think these next 3 to 4 games are really going to determine the future of not only Justin Fields at quarterback for the Bears, but also Matt Eberflus as the head coach of the Chicago Bears. We're going to talk about which head coach will be the first one fired in 2023, and obviously Eberflus will be included in that discussion. Before we do, though, Alex, I just want to give you credit. Last week, Thursday Night Football, you had the Lions. I thought that the Packers were going to be able to protect their house. Nope, you were right on that one, and the Lions take major control of the NFC North. So just a little bit of credit to you there before we move forward. But we are going to talk about which head coach will be fired first here in just a moment. Before we do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. Let me lay it out to you guys. It's this easy. So on PrizePicks, you go on there and you select 2 to 6 players and you look at their stat projection. So Khalil Herbert, 50 rushing yards. Sam Howell, 175 passing yards. Terry McLaurin, 3 catches. DJ Moore, 4 catches. All you do is look at the projection and say whether the player is going to do more or less. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can win up to 25 times your money if you hit right. It's literally that easy. You can make an entry in 60 seconds or less. And instead of playing against thousands of bots or pros or sharks or people with a million lineups in the same contest, just play you against the projections at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Alex, let's continue a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Before we continue, I do want to let you guys know about the Locked On NFL live kickoff show. It's 2 p.m. Eastern every single Friday. It's on all the Locked On NFL YouTube channels. So Locked On Titans, Locked On Cardinals, Locked On Bears, Locked On Commanders, Locked On NFL. It's live on all channels. So you don't got to do anything crazy to make sure that you watch it. But it's a sweet kickoff show. Great hosts, in-depth analysis. You get stuff from all the Locked On local hosts as well. It's the most all-encompassing preview show for the NFL you're going to find. So make sure that you check that out on the Locked On NFL YouTube channel or any Locked On NFL podcast YouTube channel, the Locked On NFL live kickoff show. But we talked about Matt Eberflus just a second ago, and I think that there is a very good chance that Matt Eberflus is the first head coach fired in 2023. At the end of the day, he was brought on as a defensive coach, and the Bears' defense isn't good. They are not only – I think when you look at first coach fired and getting fired mid-season, it's not just about being bad on the field. You guys, I'm talking like I'm on my show, But people have to remember here, NFL teams are owned by human beings who feel embarrassment, who feel despair. And if you embarrass an owner, not only just you lose, a lot of bad teams happen every year. But if you're an embarrassing storyline that the owner has to hear about amongst all his rich buddies all the time, that is when you get fired. Like Nathaniel Hackett last year. It wasn't just the Broncos were bad. They were a national embarrassment because of the storyline. Well, with Alan Williams, the defensive coordinator, and all the craziness around his resignation, and then all of the players, Fields blaming coaching, Chase Claypool acting out this Claypool situation, the ownership is going to feel embarrassed at some point. So it's not just losing, it's being embarrassing. And I think that Matt Eberflus is probably the best option available to be the first coach fired this year. Alex, do you agree with me there? And even if you do agree, what are some other options that you might be looking at?
The Bears have never been able to hire head coaches.
Right.
I mean, since Mike Ditka.
Or get quarterbacks. I mean, it's the two most important things in football is coach and quarterback, and they cannot get it right.
Matt Nagy, John Fox, just like the list.
I mean, Matt Nagy doesn't even know his name. He said, Nagy, say whatever you want. You don't even know your own name.
Yeah. Have a backbone and tell us what your damn name is, Matthew. For me, this guy is 2 tipped ball interceptions away from already not having a job. Mm-hmm. And that is Brandon Staley. Like Brandon Staley, if they would have lost to Minnesota, if TJ Hawkinson would have been able to bring that ball in the end zone after going forward on 4th and 1 from your 25-yard line, that's fireable. He did it again the week after. Instead of punting to a backup quarterback, he went for it again on 4th and 1 deep in their own territory and had to rely on Asante Samuel Jr. intercepting the ball pretty much on the goal line. This guy does not deserve a head coaching job. And you know why Kellen Moore took the OC job there? Was it because of Justin Herbert? Sure. Was it also because he was Jack Del Rioing it? Hopefully Brandon Staley got fired midseason so he could just move into that role? Of course. And that's what should happen. I don't care that they won the last 2 games. He should have been fired after the Minnesota game, even though they won. I said this about Cliff Kingsbury a lot. I don't know where this is all coming from. Maybe this is just PTSD about Cliff Kingsbury with the Cardinals. If the defense isn't good, why is Brandon Staley the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers? He's a defensive-minded guy. He was the wunderkind with the Rams, with that defense. You're telling me that defense of Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa up front, Asante Samuel Jr., Derwin James, etc., are one of the worst defenses in the NFL? Stop it. He should have been fired already. I still think he should be the first coach fired the next game they lose.
Yeah, and they're lucky they got away with that win in Minnesota, or it might have been coming. I agree with you. And they signed J.C. Jackson to this huge deal, and he's a complete failure. And then they trade him back to the New England Patriots and for a late round pick swaps. And they're going to have to eat $11 million and I think higher than that the next 2 seasons in dead cap because it didn't work out. And you have a defensive coach who should be able to take a high-priced cornerback and fit him into your system. So I agree with you. It's just unacceptable for them to be where they're at with what he's supposed to specialize in. It doesn't make any sense. And like you said, what value is he bringing? The one name that I want to add in here, and maybe recent current events, if anybody has seen the video, and I'll discuss what video has seen it, it has kind of ruined this, but Josh McDaniels. I mean, you have there's a player, I think it was Marcus Peters, the cornerback, going out liking posts saying fire Josh McDaniels. Devontae Adams has looked frustrated. They just don't seem to be well coached each week. They're not making the right decisions. McDaniels makes questionable in-game management decisions as well. I think the Raiders, after they got rid of Derek Carr, we talked about this. They blamed Derek Carr. They said, hey, we need to get rid of Derek Carr. We're going to bring in Jimmy G. We'll be better. Well, I think after getting rid of a guy who had been so loyal to the franchise and then now they're losing games and looking absolutely pitiful, I think it's fair to say that maybe it wasn't Derek Carr. Maybe Josh McDaniels is the problem. And the video that I'm referencing is there was a video of Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders, basically yelling at a fan at the game on Sunday, use your head, blah, 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 because they were saying to fire Josh McDaniels. So Mark Davis may be telling us right there that that's not something that he's considering. I think personally it's a financial thing where he doesn't want to have to pay a fired coach and then hire a new coach. It's no secret that the Raiders aren't the richest organization in the NFL right now. So I think it's more of a financial decision, which is why I think Eberflus or Staley are better options. But in terms of who deserves it and who I think is the worst coach, I think that Josh McDaniels is a worse head coach than Brandon Staley and Matt Eberflus. I do. So I think he deserves to be fired first, but he won't be.
Imagine trusting somebody who said no to a head coaching job overnight in Indy. That's all I needed to see. I would never hire somebody who said, I will be your next head coach, and then said, nope, just kidding, and went back to New England. That's it for me. That was a couple years ago.
It's just a business thing. Yeah, It's just the type of person that you're hiring. I agree with you on that. Is there anybody out there that we haven't talked about that you like?
There's one that I'm happy we're not talking about, and I'm surprised is Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles has done a fantastic job there in Tampa Bay with what he's been doing. And he, again.
They may fire him because he's winning too much.
So, what?
They may fire him because he's winning too much.
Yeah, I know. Well, really. I mean, the cover zero heard around the world that kept them from getting to the Super Bowl or getting to the NFC Championship game against the Rams that let Cooper Kupp go. And then he's really just been good, solid, and, you got to give him credit for that. One honorable mention, this may be a year too early, but Kevin O'Connell seems to have no control over that team. I mean, I don't really know. Like last year, they were 12-4, I think. They won a whole bunch of games where they were one score. They came back from 30 down on, what was it, Christmas or Thanksgiving? There was some huge game where they came back from 20-plus points. That team, who's the leader of that team? And that's when you have to question it.
I don't know.
Reason why.
Kirk Cousins,
they should be losing the way that they're losing. So I think Kevin O'Connell.
It shouldn't be this bad.
Sorry? Yeah, they shouldn't. They shouldn't.
Right.
They shouldn't. So
listen, we expected regression, but
so negative stuff is fine. Positive stuff is great. Tyler's and my favorite segment of the week, best NFL games of week 5 coming up next. And unlike last week where there were some really good ones and really bad ones, this is chock full of oh boy, oh Barrett. So these are going to be some fun games to watch. We'll hit that next. We roll on here. Locked On NFL Thursday. Alex Clancy, Tyler Rowland. This episode of Locked On NFL Thursday is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel. Okay. I love FanDuel. And FanDuel is loved by, everybody because they're America's #1 sportsbook. Okay. So a couple of things I need to tell you. First, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. I'll say it again. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app's super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. I know Tyler likes a single game parlays. You take $5, you do over-unders on 7 or 8 things in one game. You can win a whole bunch of cheese just from one small bet, all at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And this episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like your brain is just getting in its own way? Like you know what you should do, what's good for you, but you just can't do it? Well, therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Super streamlined, super easy. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So if you're trying to get out of your own way, this can help. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Tyler, it's time.
Oh, yeah.
This is, and listen, I did this on my Locked On Cardinals podcast yesterday. Disclaimer time. First of all, thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. At Tic Tac Titans on Twitter for him, Tyler Rowland, Locked On Titans. At Clancy's Corner, Locked On Cardinals for me. This is the time of year where people start to take the NFL for granted. And not for granted like, the NFL, it's just great. No. Weeks 5 to like weeks 12 are always the blur.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're like, football's next week. Awesome. Oh, we have so much time. Football's, and then
season doesn't start till Thanksgiving.
And you're like, oh no, there's only 2 weeks left.
Yeah.
Live existentially in this time for the next 12 weeks so it doesn't just fall by the proverbial wayside of just expecting it to be around forever. It won't be. Mm-hmm. The first month of the season has gone by so fast and nobody talks about it. Appreciate it. So as we pivot in, Tyler, I will give you the mantle. I will give you the throne. I will give you you're up. Favorite games, best games going into week 5.
All right. Well, there's one game that stands above all the rest. It is Dallas against San Francisco. I mean, what an absolutely incredible matchup. 2 of the 3 best teams in the NFC. Would you say the 4 best teams in the NFC right now are San Francisco, Dallas, Philly, and Detroit?
Yeah. That's probably
that would probably be my top 4 as we go right now. But seeing Dallas and San Francisco, who could be NFC championship game, I mean, there are more serious title contenders in the NFC this year than there were last year. And I think that makes things pretty exciting. And it's because Dallas has stepped up to the plate. So seeing if Dallas can really compete against the best roster in the NFL, that to me is by far and away the best game of the entire weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I think that the one that will be most telling, because listen, good teams can play poorly and still win. They find ways to win. Just like on Monday night last week when Patrick Mahomes played terribly against an inferior Jets team, they get a W anyways. Kansas City going to Minnesota, you would assume there's going to be 100 points scored. But every time we think that the Kansas City Chiefs defense steps up. So this is a game that could drop Minnesota to 1-4, have very uncomfortable conversations moving forward, especially if Jordan Addison disappears again, if Kirk Cousins turns the ball over at unnecessary time, if the defense can't stop anybody. It's going to be a very, very uncomfortable, week between week 5 and week 6 for the Minnesota Vikings if they lose in convincing fashion. And it's going to be in the afternoon slate, probably going to be the game of the week for CBS or CBS or Fox. I'm not sure.
It's CBS.
Split, but I mean, that's my big one for the week. But you're right. The 49ers and Cowboys, we'll see. Like if Dak can come in, like we've just seen this story so many times.
Who's better, Dak or Purdy?
I could play quarterback for the 49ers. I'm only kidding. That's not fair. But the best situation is definitely Brock Purdy.
Yeah. That's
what else? I mean, who else? It's just this is kind of the transition time where it's like Texans Falcons will be fun because the Falcons have played a lot better than people think. Their defense has really stepped up. CJ Stroud looks like the real deal. You and I had that well before.
I like Eagles Rams on Fox at 4:00. That's a great game. The Rams are way better than what everybody expected. They still have Sean McVay on offense. Their defense, even with all the young pieces, is playing pretty well. They kind of let off the rope last week against the Colts, but were able to land the plane and get the W. I think they've overperformed. Philly has underperformed a little bit, but I don't really blame them. They're probably bored, Super Bowl hangover, all that stuff. I still think Philly is a much better team, but LA is at home. Now, I don't think they have any kind of home field advantage that's going to be full of Eagles fans in SoFi. But at least you get to sleep in your own bed At least you get to wake up next to your wife or, your partner or whoever you want to wake up next to. You can do it when you're playing at home. You can eat at your favorite restaurant. You can get to the stadium early and be comfortable. All that stuff. I think with that home field advantage, not the crowd, but the other aspects of home field advantage and the Rams coaching staff, I think that they have a chance to make it tough on the Eagles. So I think that game will be fun to watch. If the Eagles were at home, I don't know that I would bring it up, but with these two teams, the way they're playing and the Rams being back in their home confines, I think it'll be a very interesting game with Philly.
Well, and number 18 could be in uniform. Like, we could see the return of Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor this week. I don't know, like, who has a better chance of coming back? Somebody who's more injured who probably shouldn't play, or a guy who said he doesn't want to play for this team anymore? Like, what's like? I mean, that could have been a segment, but this is just kind of what we do. Like, who has a better chance of starting this week? Jonathan Taylor in Indy or Cooper Kupp with the Rams?
I think it's Jonathan Taylor in Indy. I think he has to play. He's a running back. They want him to play as soon as possible. So I think there's more motivation to play with Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor practiced on Wednesday. So I think he's playing. As someone, the Titans are playing against the Colts this week. That's honestly a game that's worth mentioning. I know that neither of those teams are very exciting, but they're both 2-2, tied at the top of the AFC South. That's an important division game early in the year. Another game, Jacksonville and Buffalo. I mean, Alex, we have to take a moment here. I'm going to force us to do this. We have to take a little bit of an L right now. We can revisit in the playoffs, but the projected demise of the Buffalo Bills has maybe not accelerated quite as fast as we thought it might go. So I will say that Jacksonville, who's trying to turn things around, playing at home in London, that's a joke, but you guys know what I'm saying. They're going to have to show up against Buffalo, and Buffalo's been a buzzsaw since week 1. So we'll take a temporary L on our Buffalo sky is falling takes from the last
that's the best
weeks.
Defense in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sean
McDermott responded. He heard us and he responded.
No, for sure. And Trevor Lawrence has played poorly this year. I think he has 4 touchdown passes through 4 weeks. All right, he's my fantasy football quarterback, starting CJ Stroud over him this week. Hopefully Vinny Iyer of Locked On Fantasy would agree with me with that. Right. But I mean, this is going to be an interesting week. This is like because the NFL is 17 games, what I normally say is it's like a moving day. So it's like Friday at the Masters. It's moving day on Friday where it's like, okay, you want to make the cut. This is the time these next 6 or 7 weeks is what are these teams going to be? And from now until, week 7 or week 8, we're going to see what these teams are made of. Some are going to fall out. Some are going to go from 1-3 to 4-3. And this is kind of the first week where it's like, let's see what these teams are made of. Now, but before we get out of here, because we go off the cuff sometimes, what's a better draw? Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, or Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor?
I think that Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor are more exciting to watch.
Yeah. I mean, I would just love to see, like, imagine if you had, what's a comp like that where it's, 10 targets, 12 targets, like Terrell Owens and Chad Ochocinco in Cincinnati. Like when you had these 2 bona fide studs on the outside. I guess
Randy Moss and Gronkowski.
Yeah. Something like that, where they both get 12 targets, 10 receptions, and 150 yards and a touchdown each. Like, it'll be.
It's like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith last year. You know what I mean? I mean, basically, but I had something. Oh, let me say this. The NFL season is like golf. Opening round of the tournament on Thursday. You're just seeing where you're at, feeling out the course. Friday, similar thing, but Saturday's moving day.
Yeah, Saturday's moving day.
Saturday is when the pack really starts to who's going to contend, who's not. That's what these next few weeks are going to be before that mad dash at the end after Thanksgiving, where we really solidify who the best teams are. I think this next 5-week stretch, like you've been saying, is absolutely critical. But with that being said, that is going to do it for a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Make sure you're back on Friday so that you're checking out your boy Q and Chris Carter on the Friday edition of Locked On NFL. But as I say every week, start your weekend early, folks, and be safe out there.